Rev up your engines!
Ron Howell says, what's up with the Toyota RAV4 fuel pumps and fuel tank issues? Okay, Toyota doesn't make their own fuel pumps. It's a company called Nippon Denso, and they make them. And they made a mistake buying them from them because they screwed up a whole bunch of them for all kinds of cars. And that's the main problem, is they didn't build the pumps right. There's only a certain amount of years that they did it. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. My 94 Toyota Celica, it's got a Nippon Denso pump, right? It's got 240,000 miles. It's a 1994. It's still on the original pump. They always made pretty good pumps. They screwed up in a batch of them, millions of them, I think. And they got to replace them all free. Now, it's not that big of a deal because they're not like American cars where you got to drop the gas tank. You take the back seat out, there's a bunch of screws, you take the cover off, and there's the pump inside. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like, where you got to drop the tank and all that crap, which is an absolute mess. They're not that hard to do, but they were just built wrong. And like you said, Toyota doesn't make them. Nippon Denso does. All these companies generally buy their pumps from somebody else. Texas Jeff 84 says, Scotty, what do you think of hand-cooked tires? All right, the thing is, some of them are good and some of them are crap. I would not buy bottom-end hand-cooked tires. The cheapest ones, I've seen them come apart. I've seen them have all kinds of problems. Sometimes hand-cooked tires, if they're high-end ones, can be excellent tires. The cheaper ones, I'd stay away from them. Whenever you're looking at tires, you want to see where they're made. If they're made in China, I'd kind of go away from them. They're made someplace else, then you think about buying them. I'm not a fan of Chinese tires by any stretch of the imagination. Well, he says that stop-and-go technology. I'm convinced it'll hurt a car. What do you think? Yeah, it will. 90-something% of your wear is on startup. The oil drains down. All modern cars are overhead cams. The cams are on the top of the engine. They're drained. There's no oil in them. When you start up, the oil has to be pumped by the oil pump to the top of the engine to lubricate it. If you keep turning your car on and off, it's going to wear everything out. Now, they claim, we have better bearings in the cams. We have stronger blah, 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 but it's a bunch of nonsense. Starting and stopping your vehicle is horrendous. And just to save a tiny amount of gas, it's going to wear out your car, and then you got to go buy a $50,000 car too soon, wore out starting and stopping. It's just an annoying thing, but, the government gives them bonuses because it's better ratings for gas mileage because when it's idling, it's not burning gas, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, do they care if the things break down when they get to be 5 to 8 years old? No, they don't. They want you to buy another car to support the manufacturer. So, no, it's a stupid idea. I wouldn't buy a car like that. If I had a car like that, I would turn the system off. Some of them, you push a button that turns them off. I would just have it permanently. I would rewire it so it was permanently off and never came on because it's nonsense. You want to sit there for 5-10 minutes? You can turn the key off yourself. You don't need to do it every time you come to a stop. Just plain stupidity. William Tolley says, what is a carbon job from VW? They want to charge $1,000. All right. This is the problem with the Volkswagens. Volkswagens with GDI fuel injections, the engine carbons up, the intake valves. They all carbon up because of the GDI fuel injection system that Volkswagen used. And the reason they're charging you $1,000 is because they have to take the engine apart. They got to take the intake manifold out. Then they get a blasting machine. It's a sandblasting machine, basically, but they don't put sand in it. They put walnut pieces because walnut's softer. The sand will bore holes in the aluminum head and ruin your head. The walnut doesn't. So that's what they're doing, and that's what they charge $1,000. You might find somebody else will do it for half price, but they're going to have to take the intake manifold off. It is a big, gigantic job. Another reason I say, don't buy Volkswagens. They're not made that well. They have problems. Do not buy a Volkswagen. You won't have to deal with that crap in the first place. But if it really is carboned up, I've seen them where they're this thick. Some cars will be a little tiny bit. Volkswagens will be like this much, and you got to blast them off with walnut shells and pressure. It's the only thing that'll take them off. Vistio Beeben says, Scotty, do some fault codes from the SRS, ABS, and transmission pass through the engine control module so a cheaper scan tool can report them? Yes, a certain amount will, and it depends on how cheap the scan tool is. Like, if you want to get a good scan tool, but you don't want to spend a fortune, that Blue Driver the Canadians do, it used to be $99, I think it's $120 now, works with your phone. It does a lot of those codes, and for that price, it's smart because why buy a whole machine, right? That somebody's got to build, put together, blah, blah, blah. You already got a cell phone, right? The cell phone operates all that stuff. They're super fast these days. That The blue driver just works off your cell phone. You plug the dongle in the car, and the Canadians do good software stuff. If you know, don't mind spending $120, whatever it is now. It used to be 99, but, you know, times change, inflation goes up. They're really good scan tools for that amount of money. When you consider the average mechanic is charging $100 to $150 an hour labor, it might be worthwhile to buy one of those $120 scan tools just so you can learn a few things and not get ripped off on repairs. R. Smith, 2112, and he says, Scotty, how are you doing? I was wondering about your opinion on Saturn. I don't think I heard you talk about him. Okay, now Saturn were a bizarre company. The car for everybody, and people could have vacations at their factory originally. It's kind of funny. This guy by the name of Paul, he was a customer of mine in Houston. He moved to San Francisco, and he ended up as an advertising executive that was the head of Saturn's Your Car Company crazy stuff that they had. It was a GM offshoot, and they were cheaper made cars. I had a customer, hilarious enough, by the name of Linda Toyota. She always had Toyotas, but she thought, I'll buy American. She bought a Saturn. She hated it. She said the fit and finish was about 60% of the Toyota. It didn't last that long. They were cheaper made cars. Now, the four-cylinder ones sometimes could last for a while. Originally, they would put V6 ones in from Honda. But Honda had a big row because GM said, we're not using Honda coolant. We only use our Dex coolant. So Honda said, we won't sell you engines anymore. So that was the end of that. Then they made their own V6 engines, which were garbage. And you can get them dirt cheap now. You know, the company's bankrupt. It doesn't exist anymore. But it was just GM. And then they had all kinds of infighting with General Motors, where General Motors was taking some of their labor away because they were mad that they had a better image than GM. It was a big disaster in the long run. They don't make them anymore. A lot of it had to do with trying to make fancier cars, and then they screwed up. They should have stuck with the four-cylinder models. They probably would have been okay. Sam B says, I get a ticky noise when I idle at a 2018 Accord, 1.5 turbo, 45,000 miles. Is it normal? Seems louder. Is it too soon to get them adjusted? I would get them adjusted just because it's a 1.5 turbo. They rev up higher. It's got gasoline direct injection. There's more strain in the engine. I would get your valves adjusted. Now, there's all kinds of things that can make noises. The injectors, but start by getting a valves adjustment. What the heck? It's a 1.5. It's only a four-cylinder engine, 16 valves to adjust. I would start there. And if you're curious, get one of those mechanic stethoscopes like I have. I find the electronic ones are best. They're like $40-50 on Amazon, headphones on, and you can touch them all. And you can see sometimes the injectors will click, sometimes it's something else, but just take the valve cover off, check a few of the valves, and if they're off, get them all adjusted. It's a good idea. Engines cost a fortune, and if it's making more noise than it did before, obviously, you know, now you got 45,000 miles, I'd do the valves first, just because. Kevin Lewis says, do you think it's possible for scientists to make a formula to be used in gas cars to put off less pollution and be more affordable for U.S. people? Of course, anything's possible. Now, this is all upcoming technology. Porsche is working in South America. I believe it's in Chile, where they're going to take the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, make sustainable biofuel with it. Then when that's burnt in the car, the main pollution is just going to be carbon dioxide. Then their machines take the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, reburn it. So it would be like the water cycle. It would be circular. Because, I mean, you put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it goes all over the place. It doesn't stay in one place. It's all mixed. So it doesn't matter where you burn it. You stock it out, it'll all end up over the earth pretty much the same over time with wind and stuff. That's totally doable if people want to put money in the infrastructure. And who's to say who's going to put what kind of money in the infrastructure, whose political friends are tied in that they're going to do this. But it is certainly possible to be done. And it makes a lot more sense than electric batteries, which are polluting to make. They don't last all that long. All this electric stuff. The truth of it all, I had a guy visit me when I was in Rhode Island. He said, Scotty, I went out to California where they had all these windmills that they were making electricity, right? And he went to the ones that were around that crazy dried up lake that's in the middle of the desert now. And he said in the surrounding areas, there were just wrecked ones, hundreds all over the place, because after so many years, they're no good. And then they cost so much money, they just abandoned them all. So a lot of this green technology is BS. It might not make bad sense at all to They burn out, they let off carbon dioxide, we suck it back out, create another fuel. That didn't make sense. Porsche's working on it. They claim that in a year or so, they're going to be making millions of gallons of this stuff. Hey, we'll find out. Gene says, Scotty, how are you? Great to be here. I know you love motorcycles. I got a question. I got a Honda CG 125 Vintage. Should I use regular or premium gas? Use premium, because back in the day when that was made, gasoline had a better octane on it. It's an old motorcycle. And if you can find premium that doesn't have the ethanol in it, I would do that, because because that motorcycle isn't set up to run with the ethanol, and the ethanol might mess up your carburetor because they weren't set up for running with alcohol. Alcohol ruins carburetors. They're not made to run on carburetors. Like back in the day when I was young and guys would race dragsters and they'd run on alcohol fuel, ethanol, pure ethanol. They had to have special carburetors built with special parts so they could run correctly. The regular ones couldn't run that way. So try to find ethanol free. It would actually be more important to get ethanol free gas, regardless of what octane it was, than it would be to get a high octane one that was full of a ton of ethanol, because it wouldn't be good for the carburetor. And that old engine wasn't designed for that. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.